Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC, and we are doing another shootout video on the channel. We got lots of shootouts in pretty much every type of RC category, but this is probably my favorite type of RC car. Recently got into Nitro this year, and especially 1/8 buggies, probably my favorite type of Nitro vehicle. I do have monster trucks as well, but there's nothing like a Nitro buggy on a track. The most fun you can have in RC, in my opinion. Not for everybody, but I really like Nitro buggies. And what we've done is assemble basically the three most popular entry-level Nitro buggies you can buy. These are all RTR format vehicles, of course, and they're pretty much all based on a fairly old buggies within their respective brands. Over here on the left, we have the HPI Trophy 3.5. I think it's originally based on the HPI Lightning. I kind of tried to arrange them in what I think is the original order, but I don't know. Let me know. I'm not really a Nitro buggy historian, but yeah, the HPI Trophy 3.5. Originally based off their Lightning. Now they do have a higher spec model, the Vorza 3.5, so that is a nicer HPI vehicle. Costs a little bit more, and it does have, based on a much more newer vehicle, more on the HPI Racing race buggy that came out, probably, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. This is a pretty old design, I think closer to like 20 years. In the middle, we have the Kyosho Inferno NEO 3.0. So this is, again, their budget or entry level Nitro RTR buggy. It is based off the original Inferno like 7.5. So again, that's like a 20-year-old buggy, but this is their ready to run version. It sells for $350. The HPI is around $470 depending on where and when you pick it up, but definitely the Kyosho is going to be the cheapest at $350. Again, they do have a higher spec version. They do currently have an MP9 TKI4 Nitro RTR that sells for about $500, so that is a higher spec, but we are more concentrating on the entry-level Nitro vehicles. For those of you that want to get in Nitro, want to try it out, maybe you're curious about this four-wheel drive buggy thing, this is kind of a good way to get into it. And then finally, over here on the right, we have the very popular Losi 8, again the Nitro RTR version. I think it's kind of based on the 8 3.0, so they've had a lot of different 8s through the years, 8 1.0 through 4.0, and then they currently have an 8X and an 8X 2.0 essentially. So yeah, again, Nitro version sells for $470, just like the HPI. And it's been out for, I think the original 3.0 was it's probably like 10 years old at this point. It's fairly old, but this is their Nitro version. So yeah, $470, $350, and the other $470 vehicle. So we're gonna be going through this basically in order from third to first. Third, what I would rank it, and then first. And then I also have full reviews on all these vehicles, so if you're interested in knowing a lot more about them in depth, you can go check them out. But I'm just gonna go through it from third to first place. All right, in third place, we have the HPI Racing Trophy 3.5. Again, this is a 0.21 cubic inch engine, so this is going to be completely race legal. You can buy this, race it if you like. This was my very first Nitro buggy, and to be quite frank, even though it places last in this comparison, I enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it, and enough to actually continue with Nitro and think that it was a cool thing. So obviously, I think it's totally fine for a beginner. Pulling off the body, and look at the vehicle itself. It does normally have a different air filter, so I put on basically an air filter from a Savage, just a little more airflow. The vehicle itself does have the Force 3.5 cc engine, so this is their standard HPI Racing kind of race engine that they use on all their RTRs. You can see aluminum servo mounts here, one lay down, one upright, aluminum shock towers. They are stamped pieces, not particularly expensive. Shocks are composite with aluminum, sort of hybrid shock caps. They are kind of skinny, I'd say, kind of like 10 or 12 millimeter bore, fairly skinny, fairly old shocks, and I couldn't really find other springs that will fit, so that was kind of a limitation of this. The tires actually have decent grip all the way around. They're good basher tires. Fit totally fine, no issues with that. Really kind of the complaints I had about this vehicle is that the engine's a little bit down on power. Now this is my first Nitro, maybe I messed it up or whatever, but it does seem a little bit slower, a little bit lower revs than the other vehicles, and that's kind of the area where I felt like it was a little bit weak. Other areas, the screws are all Phillips head screws, so I did swap out a lot of them to X head, but that is one thing pretty common with a lot of these RTR Nitros, that they a lot of times come with Phillips head. The Kyosho is the same way. Radio is the TF41. Works totally fine. Actually, one of my favorite RTR radios, even though it's fairly simple. It does have all the adjustments you want, including endpoint adjustment on the throttle size. It does come with a battery tray, so you can throw that in there. I typically run a life battery, but you know, that is an option. The vehicle itself handles okay. You know, it does feel a little dated, a little less traction. It is probably the lightest of the three of these. So from that respect, you know, it's okay. Brakes seem totally fine. It does have the dual disc brakes, so that is pretty good. Overall, yeah, the vehicle is just kind of basic. I would say it's pretty old design and it has enough aluminum parts to be reasonably durable. I did break some things like the spindles, some of the parts up front. I think even the caster block as well I broke. So yeah, a few things that will break. I think it's probably one of the weaker vehicles. It's just a really old design, and honestly, if you're an HPI racing fan, probably worth it to consider getting the Vorza buggy. That one I think is only like 20 or 30 bucks more than this, and it's a much more modern, much more updated, better vehicle. You know, the large bore shocks. It's going to feel a lot more like a modern buggy, whereas this feels like kind of an entry-level, pretty dated vehicle. Not a lot of option parts that are still on the market. You know, I don't think a lot of people are still producing stuff for this vehicle, so you're gonna just buy it, but no issues getting parts. Actually, because it's so old, you can get parts, just not a lot of upgrades. Yeah, vehicle overall totally fine. You know, obviously the pull start, it does have an aluminum exhaust pipe, which is nice. You know, not all vehicles come with the aluminum exhaust pipe, so it works totally fine. You know, all steel drivetrain throughout. Does have sway bars front and rear. So it works totally fine. Decent vehicle overall, just kind of old, kind of dated, and most importantly, I do feel like this is the slowest of the three. In second place, we got the Losi 8 Nitro RTR. This is actually the V2 version, although the V2 is pretty much the same as the V1. The only thing they changed on the V2s was basically to use a more modern radio, so they are using the SLT3 radio, but it is not compatible with other Spectrum radios, so it still has, like, I think it's called the SLT300 receiver. So again, a better radio than the old STX2 that used to come in these vehicles, but that's pretty much the only change. Pulling off the body, much more modern looking than your typical, you know, HPI Lightning or Trophy 3.5. We're starting to move into something that resembles more like a real race buggy. It does have composite shocks front and rear with aluminum adjusters, but the rest of the shocks are composite. The chassis is 6061 again stamped. Shock towers are 6061 stamped. That's pretty much what you'll find with the Nitro vehicles on the RTR side. That's going to be the main difference. Obviously, an RTR comes with an engine, radio, electronics, but it just has cheaper components overall. It does have the plastic links front and rear. It does have sway bars front and rear, so that is nice. And a lot of the 3.0 parts will actually bolt right onto this. So some of the parts are actually full-on 3.0 parts, but some of them are basically cheaper versions, like the plastic links, the aluminum chassis. Those are just going to be a little bit downgraded from before. One nice thing about this vehicle, it does come with a battery. Actually, it comes with a 5-cell hump pack, load of dynamite pack. So that's a pretty nice advantage of this thing. You know, it is a lot more closer to ready run out of the box than the other vehicles because it does come with some extras. Receiver tray is actually pretty nice. Servos did go out on me, so again, those are like pretty old Spectrum servos. I replaced one with the Hobao servo. That's gonna be an area you probably want to upgrade. The engine also, as you can see, the head cracked just from the initial drive. Actually, I did crack the head. Some of the fins broke off. Horizon have really good warranty, and so they were able to actually ship me out a new one. I did also change out the pipe, so I'm running the Dynamite tuned pipe. The original pipe just fell off every time I crashed, so not really that fun. But you know, I think that is also a worthy upgrade. Tires actually work pretty good. They are a very race-looking, you know, sort of tread pattern. They are pretty hard compound still, so the foams are quite firm, the rubber is quite firm, but the tread pattern is a lot closer to what you would expect on a real race buggy. Radio is actually excellent, SLT3, one of my favorite ready to run radios. Not as great for Nitro because it doesn't have easy endpoint adjustments for the throttle that you might have on you know, some of the other radios like the HPI Racing radio, but it works totally fine. Actually, pretty good response, and you know, one of the better ones. Power wise, this thing's mid-pack. I think the Kyosho again is faster. I think the HPI is actually slower. This is a little bit more in power than the HPI. Not a ton more. I'd say probably, you know, 5 or 10% more power, more revs than the HPI. All these vehicles I just tuned to the best of my abilities. And you know, maybe I'm not the best Nitro tuner, but you know, I seem to be able to extract as much as I could get just with playing with the needles. You know, I'm just running 20% nitro fuel and all these things, nothing crazy, just running basic sort of basher type fuel and, you know, tuning as I would a basher that's just trying to get the best out of a stock engine. Pull start, of course. It is a little bit more work to convert this to a bump box or a back plate because basically this motor's a little bit too close to this brace. If you were to actually, that's why it's raised up, is because of that pull start. So to actually convert to a bump box, you have to get different mounting blocks, which I don't think they sell anymore. I was able to snag a pair, but you do need to lower this engine. It is raised up for that pull start so that it doesn't interfere with the rear chassis brace. So a little bit more work to convert it. But the rest of the vehicle seems fine. It is all SAE screws, so you know, I like that better than Phillips head screws because at least you can use hex driver and stuff. But again, you know, not a whole lot of people are going to have SAE drivers and nut drivers and stuff like that. So be aware of that. If you need to buy one of these things, it will be a little more work to work on it because you will need to make sure you have the right amount of screws. So yeah, overall the vehicle, it's actually pretty stable, drives well, a little bit heavy, but that's, you know, kind of makes it easy to drive. Really the only complaint I have is that, you know, some of these parts seem not the most durable. You will want to look into getting a different pipe. You will want to look into changing out the servos. I don't know if this engine will last forever. You may need to change that at some point. So yeah, kind of the components they throw into this thing are a little on the cheap side and maybe not the most reliable. And that's kind of the area where I think this is a little bit weaker. It's also kind of priced at $470, you know. Same price as the HPI, but the HPI you can oftentimes find a little bit cheaper. The Losi, it's 470 bucks, and I'm not really seeing that value there. So on that side, again, I think it's a little more expensive, but you do actually get like a full-on race buggy. So I think that's kind of nice with the Losi 8. And that leaves us with the winner of the entry-level Nitro RTR Shootout. This is going to be the Kyosho Inferno NEO 3.0. This was a legit race buggy, you know, like 15, 20 years ago. It won world championships and stuff. And it comes as a Nitro RTR, which is really excellent because it is a great buggy overall. And the most amazing thing about this is it's cheap. It's $350 at the time of this video. That makes it well below the other Nitro RTRs and actually even lower than most, like even 10 scale trucks and electric vehicles and stuff like that. So it's an amazing value. I do have a full review on this where I call it the best value in RC. I actually do think it's the best value in RC. Amazing what you get for 350 bucks. It's incredible. So pulling off the body, take a look at this vehicle. You know, this is what it looks like. This is what it looked like 20 years ago with the Inferno 7.5, and that's what it looks like today. I did make some modifications. I am running actually an MP9 style air filter, which just has more flow. Obviously, it collects more dirt, but you know, just gives a little bit more performance in my opinion. Shocks again are composite front and rear. At least it has aluminum adjusters and aluminum, you know, sort of hybrid shock caps. They did beef up the front shock tower on the 3.0 over the 2.0, so they made it a little more durable. These are still stamped pieces in the front, and the rear is quite thin. I think like a 3mm shock tires, but you know, it doesn't really break that much. But this thing has actually been super reliable. Performance is amazing. Actually, I think this engine is definitely the highest performing of the three of these. Out of the box, you know, it revs pretty high. I don't know what the rev limit is, but you know, you definitely get a little more speed with this. I was able to clear jumps with this that I can't with the other two. The wheels are totally fine. You know, again, they're kind of a basher style wheel, almost like a Badlands style tire with the big knobbies and stuff, but they work great on dirt. I'm sure they'll be fine on the street, on any sort of track. They're going to be okay for traction, even in a race environment. You know, they're not going to be the best, but you get some traction there. Vehicle itself, pretty substantial links here in the front upper arms. Rear links are also pretty substantial. The steering links are a little bit more skinny out there, but does have the aluminum top brace here, all steel drivetrain. Brakes work really well. Really, the only downside to this is that you do need to upgrade the spur gear. I would highly recommend getting the steel spur gear. I did break that on the very first time I took this thing out. A very common problem. I think pretty much everyone that does a review of this vehicle does upgrade the steel spur gear, so just budget that in mind and probably throw that in your order when you pick one of these things up. Radio is actually also excellent. The Synchro, I don't know what they call this, the KT231P has tons of dials, tons of adjustments, including the all-important throttle trim and throttle endpoint adjustment. Steering wheel is a little weird because it's angled, but you know, it's foam. It works fine. Just something I wasn't totally used to, and I think it's three channel actually. radio as well. So decent radio, actually, not bad at all. You know, I don't like the angle of steering wheel, but the rest of it seems totally fine. So yeah, $350, it's the cheapest, it's the highest performing in my opinion, actually steers quite well. You will want to kind of mess around with the divs to get some shock fluid in there. I think it just comes with grease out of the box. So doing some diff tuning, maybe try different tires, and I think you'll have actually a pretty good vehicle out of the box. And it seems quite durable as well. Besides the spur gear, really haven't broken anything. The whole vehicle is quite beefy. I mean, looking at this, you know, all the arms and stuff actually are pretty heavy duty. Now, I also like the receiver radio tray here in the back. It's not completely watertight, but it is easy access, just uses body clips. Compare that to the Losi, which uses like a screwdriver, kind of annoying. The HPI just has little body clips, but they're kind of in a hard to get to position. So, you know, this is actually one of the better radio trays. Again, also the servos are easy access, just 4 screws from the top. You can just pull that thing out. So yeah, overall, excellent vehicle. I'm a big fan of this buggy. I've never actually had a Kyosho until I picked this thing up, so I was pleasantly surprised. Definitely wanted to check out more Kyosho vehicles in the future, especially on the 8th scale Nitro side. I think they're awesome, and I'm glad that, you know, all these companies are still making Nitro vehicles. It's kind of the greatest thing, right? Nitro, I think it's making a little bit of a comeback, you know, as people kind of get into RC, want to try different things. A few people are kind of getting Nitro, and I think that's awesome because I like companies that still support Nitro. Kyosho, HPI, Losi, they all still make Nitro vehicles, and that's great. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this. There'll probably be more Nitro content on this channel in the future. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.